Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound. Today is Thursday, May 15th, and we just got through one of the biggest commitments of the cycle. On Tuesday, number one prospect overall, Jackson Cantwell, made his decision. And we had it live right here on the On3 Recruits channel. If you guys weren't around, you guys go check that one out. We got more to come, so be sure to hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right. Let's bring in the most plugged-in expert on the planet to talk a little recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. We're going to start off with a little five-star buzz. Take us behind the scenes of what was a crazy kind of 72 hours leading up to that Jackson Cantwell commitment.
Well, I talked to Jackson Cantwell about his commitment to Miami on Wednesday morning, and he told me that Miami led in March going into April. Then Georgia took the lead in April going into May. And at the end, it was the Hurricanes rallying back and winning this recruitment. It was a combination of things that obviously lead the number one recruit in the On3 industry to Coral Gables. And I know everybody loves to point to the NIL and Miami having the biggest offer on the table of $2.5 million. And it obviously very exciting opportunity for Jackson Cantwell in that regard. But he also talked about how Miami just out-recruited everybody, how he talked to the Miami staff more than any other program, more than Georgia, more than Oregon, more than any of his other finalists, which include Michigan, Ohio State, and Missouri. He pointed towards Coach Mirabel and Coach Cristobal's track record of developing offensive linemen, how three-and-done first-round draft picks. Coach Cristobal was able to point to that several times in the course of his career. He said everybody's got money. He said, yeah, Miami's good at NIL, but so are the other programs. And these schools aren't bidding against each other. I think that's always the funny thing. Or excuse me, these schools aren't bidding against themselves. So it's always funny when you point the finger at one school and say, well, he took the bag or he took the biggest check, and people are very judgmental with that. Like they don't take the highest paying salary job that they can get at times. But Jackson Cantwell wants to play in the NFL. He wants to be a first-round draft pick. Miami has a track record of that. He enjoyed building relationships with these college staffs on the next level. No program recruited him harder than Miami. And then certainly Miami stepped to the table in a big way on the NIL front, and he's in an era where he can cash in on that. And he is a Hurricane. Miami is up to number 8 in the On3 industry recruiting rankings. They're going to push for a top 5 class. Jackson Cantwell certainly gives them momentum going into the summer. And one thing we know, with the rest of Miami's top targets, Mario Cristobal and that staff is not going to be out recruited. They are going to be in daily communication from now till the end of the summer. So if you are recruiting against Miami for some of these coveted targets like Derek Cooper, you better bring your A game, because Miami has a lot of momentum right now and they're pushing hard.
Yeah, I love where Miami's at on the trail. They move into the top 10, sitting there at number 8 currently, and they're looking for more. All right, let's stick with the five-star buzz because we've had a couple major developments in the recruiting world. Linebacker Xavier Griffin out of the state of Georgia, committed to USC for some months now, decommitted despite USC fans in the comment section of all these YouTube videos saying it could never happen. Boy, it happened. Xavier Griffin now on the open market. Steve, who are some of the contenders to land him?
Well, I heard that USC is looking to invoke a non-visit policy with their commits. And so Xavier Griffin wanted to take visits. So the two parties have parted ways. It'll be interesting to see what that means for USC over the rest of the cycle. That also happened with the recent receiver who decommitted, Cone Brown, from the Lone Star State. So USC, if you are committed to the Trojans right now, it's like the same thing at Clemson. You're not taking visits elsewhere. Xavier Griffin wanted to take visits elsewhere, so he'll do that. And USC has moved on as well, and they'll be recruiting another linebacker pass rusher in the 2026 class to fill his shoes. There are contenders for Xavier Griffin. I think that this is a recruitment that's also going to have some major NIL implications. Georgia's looking to get him on campus this weekend for the scavenger hunt. I think they trail. I think you got to look immediately at programs like Texas, Ohio State, and Alabama in this recruitment. And then there's others like Tennessee and Florida State involved. And, NIL is going to be a real factor in
Yep.
this recruitment, among other things.
All right, we will continue to watch Xavier Griffin now he's back on the market. Let's talk about a new prediction. A 5-star prediction on offensive tackle Emmanuel Ihenacho. This came as the dust had not settled yet on the Jackson Cantwell commitment to Miami. You put in a prediction for Ihenacho, the number 2 ranked offensive tackle, to land where, Steve?
At Oregon. And I felt like Oregon's been the leader for a while, but I just didn't log that prediction because I wanted to make sure that Jackson Cantwell ended up at Miami before I logged that prediction. Oftentimes readers would like to say at the end, oh, Wiltfong, he changes his prediction right at the end to make sure that he's right. But oftentimes in some of these tight recruiting battles down the stretch, one of the reasons why you have to wait until the last day to make that change is because these recruitments are so close and you don't know how this 5-star or that 5-star or that elite player is going to wake up and feel, even though you got a good feel for Miami the day before, which we wrote and talked about on the Wiltfong Whiparound and on 3. What if it would have went back to Georgia? Then you got to make another flip-flop. If we made the RPM picks and stayed with every turn, man, readers would be going crazy. Like, these young men don't actually change their minds. So I wanted to make sure that Jackson Cantwell ended up at Miami and not at Georgia or Oregon, obviously, specifically in this case. And the Ducks were pushing to the end before predicting Ihenacho to Oregon, because I just don't see how they could land both and be able to afford both. But Ihenacho, the number 2 player in the country, someone that Oregon has had to campus a couple times, they are the leader. It's been a fluid recruitment. Georgia's been a leader for Ihenacho. They're not even a finalist. So that's how fluid this recruitment's been. Maryland's been a leader, but now you have Oregon, LSU, and Penn State in the top 3, I'm being told. I think he loves Oregon, loves Coach Terry, loves where they're at as a program. Obviously, what Oregon brings off the field from an infrastructure standpoint. So once Cantwell followed through with everything and committed to Miami, I was able to log my prediction in favor of Oregon for Ihenacho, knowing that they could still be on the gas for him. If they landed Cantwell, I don't think they would land Ihenacho.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you guys chime in. Let us know, where do you think Xavier Griffin and Emmanuel Ihenacho are going to go now that number 1 Jackson Cantwell is off the board? Talk to us. We got top targets in Athens. Let's talk a little Georgia recruiting, as the On3 Industries number 6th ranked class is looking to add more. And we got Kirby Smart's scavenger hunt this weekend. That always brings out some of the best prospects in America. Steve, who can we expect on campus this weekend?
Well, you can definitely expect recruits on campus this weekend to tweet their "We found Kirby" pictures from the Kirby scavenger hunt. It's always a fun time in Athens, and we've seen other programs kind of mimic the scavenger hunt. But Georgia, I believe, was first to do it. It's a big weekend. Coming into it, I still really like where Georgia stands with a couple of their touted prospects. That starts with Carrollton, 2-way standout Ryan Mosley, who has talked about having the opportunity to play both ways in Athens. He takes his official visit this weekend. Normally, I believe if you're taking a trip to a school in May, these are the long shot visits. The real visits are coming in June. But I like where Georgia stands with Ryan Mosley coming into the weekend. Carter Lucky's a defensive line recruit from in-state, taking an unofficial. My On3 RPM is on Georgia for him. 2 more prospects that Georgia's very much in the mix for already coming into the weekend. 4-star linebacker Nick Abrams, and then 4-star offensive lineman Wilson Zaire. Those are 2 guys that Georgia's near the top of the list for. I would not be surprised if they ultimately landed them. Shooting their shot this weekend, 5-star offensive lineman Darius Gray. There's a lot more buzz around LSU and South Carolina coming into the weekend. Then you have places like Clemson, Ohio State, and Tennessee he's high on, but he's excited to get down to Georgia. I imagine he'll have a good trip. Georgia's trying to get the number 2 linebacker in the country, Xavier Griffin, there for the scavenger hunt on Saturday. It would be an unofficial. I think Georgia's got a lot of ground to make up in that recruitment on places like Texas, Ohio State, and Alabama. But they love Xavier Griffin. They're going to recruit him to the end. He just decommitted from USC. So the first step of that is done. Glenn Schumann and company will keep battling. They'll keep battling for on 300 athlete Jalen Lott, a wide receiver candidate out of the Lone Star State. Two more key unofficial visitors, Josh. Kamari Brooks, an edge rusher from in-state. He already knows every nook and cranny of the campus. So this scavenger hunt, I expect whatever team he's on to win the scavenger hunt. And then Tyron Wortham is a receiver currently committed to UCF that that Georgia is hitting the gas on. Kamari Brooks, I would give Georgia the edge over Alabama right now, but that one's still up in the air coming into the weekend. Georgia's got the number 6 class in the country. They're looking to finish in the top 3 for a 10th straight cycle. This weekend could be pivotal towards those efforts.
Yeah. Big weekend in Athens. Georgia fans, who are you most fired up about? I know they're taking a lot of big swings here, but inevitably they're going to sign some of these guys. So who do you like? Let us know. Let's talk a little Auburn Tigers recruiting as a monster 5-star headlines a big visit weekend. We're talking in-state edge rusher Anthony Tank Jones. He's going to be out on the plane. Steve, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, our colleague Chad Simmons with the news on Wednesday evening that Anthony Tank Jones has locked in his top 5 in his official visits. It starts with Auburn this weekend. I've always liked where Alabama's at in this recruitment. I've viewed Auburn as the program pushing them the most. But Oregon is a program that has really rose up with Tank Jones. A&M is a program that's done a really good job recruiting him as well. And then Miami, we're not counting out Miami for anybody right now.
No,
I assume
not now.
We know that Miami's contacting him as much as any program at this point in his process. But Auburn getting the first official visit this weekend to set the tone in the Tank Jones recruitment. This is what an official visit's supposed to look like. He's the top prospect on campus, the number 1 recruit in the state per on 3. He's always had a lot of love for Auburn. There were times where maybe they look like the leader. I'd give the edge to Bama coming in, but no question, a lot of love for Auburn. Will be a huge weekend for Hugh Freeze and company. I think they'll get him back for an unofficial after this, but I don't know if I like bat and lead off right now in the Tank Jones sweepstakes going in early May when we know he's taking trips well into June.
Yeah, we will see. Yeah, we'll see how far in the rear view this visit ends up being for Tank Jones. But Steve, who else does Hugh Freeze have on campus this weekend?
There's a lot of studs coming to Auburn this weekend. It's kind of a shoot your shot weekend as Auburn looks to make a move with quite a few guys. Look, I like where they stand with quarterback Travis Burgess out of Loganville Grayson, state champion passer. They're battling NC State and others, North Carolina. For him, some other key defensive linemen visiting this weekend. Bryce Perry Wright, who's been to campus a few times. Trenton Henderson out of Tampa returns. Vodney Cleveland, a key in-state target. And then Ernest Rankins, another touted top 150 player. So some of the top defensive linemen in the country. 2 big-time running backs. Derek Cooper, the number 3 running back in the on-3 industry, takes his OV this weekend. I like where Miami, Georgia, and Ohio State stand in that recruitment, but he's always spoken highly of Auburn. We'll be excited to get back on the plains. And then Jay Lamar from the Peach State also visits. Clemson's been the program of note in that recruitment, but Auburn battling. A couple 4-star DBs, CJ Hester from Cocoa. He's had this visit planned for quite some time, has always liked Auburn. Florida's trending right now on the on 3 RPM. And then Brody Jennings, he's committed to Michigan. You got Miami and some others in play, but Auburn looking to make their move this weekend. This would be a 3rd straight top 10 class for Auburn. If they can get in there, they need to grab some momentum with some of these touted guys to get back into the top 10. I love the foundation of the Auburn program with the way they've recruited high school players at key positions, the way they've hit the transfer portal at key positions. It's a win now year for Hugh Freeze and company. If they do that, I think we could see them rise up late with some of these recruits, similar to Florida last year. Florida finished with the top 10 class on the heels of a great November of the season. Auburn could be a program we're talking about a lot at the end of the cycle with the chops they have, the closing power, the infrastructure they have, but they got to have a good season this year. So right now it's just keep these guys warm. Let's go play ball with our young guys and our transfer portal guys, build some more excitement again, and then close strong going into December's early signing period.
Let's talk a little Florida Gator recruiting because there is some buzz coming out of Gainesville. The Gators, they only have 1 commitment, Steve, but they have a big visit weekend lined up, and we could see some changes here.
Yeah, I think eventually Florida's going to go on a major run. But right now, they're just moving along slowly. It's a marathon. They're starting to pick up their speed. They got 5-star offensive tackle Felix Ojo back for a second time this calendar year. Texas is where my on-3 RPM is at. Ohio State, I view them as the biggest threat. But he had a great time at Florida earlier this spring and is excited to get back and get another look at the Gators. Same thing applies for the number 1 ranked recruit in New Jersey, Luke Waffle, who was on campus earlier in the spring. I think Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas are setting the tone in his recruitment, but USC and Florida have kind of rose up following spring visits, and Florida gets them back pretty quickly. And so the Gators looking to continue their ascension in the recruitment for Luke Waffle. A couple key on 300 recruits: Akini Ogboko is an offensive lineman, Carson Baker, 4-star running back. Akini Ogboko, I'm hearing more smoke around Georgia and Notre Dame. Carson Baker, my predictions on Ohio State right now. But we'll see what happens with these visits. We know that Florida can make attractive pitches on and off the field for these guys. There's a lot of excitement around DJ Lagway, and this season you're seeing Florida in some top 10s. Do you have Florida in the top 10 coming into the season? I don't know if I do, but I do have the arrow up on the Gators. We'll see what it looks like for them this fall, but they closed a hell of a recruiting class last year. We know they're going to make some moves with some guys this year, and they're certainly going to try this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Gators going to get on track here soon. We got a pivotal weekend at Penn State when it comes to recruiting. The Nittany Lions, they're surging at number 11, looking to get inside of that top 10. And Steve, they got some important targets on campus this weekend. Tell us about it.
National title contender Penn State, the Nittany Lions. So much excitement around this program after finishing in the Final Four. They bring back a loaded offense. They're retooling their defense, but we don't worry about defense under James Franklin and company. They're always in the top 10. They're always one of the most disruptive defenses in the country, and they year in and year out produce some of the best players on that side of the football in college football, and they got some coveted targets on defense taking their official visit this weekend, and that starts with Joey O'Brien, the in-state athlete recruit. We now have him ranked as a safety, but Penn State is recruiting him as an athlete that could play safety and at wide receiver. During his last visit in the spring, he saw Penn State's plan for him as a two-way player. He is bought in on that and loves the Nittany Lions and his potential there as a player. I think he's one of Penn State's most coveted targets, regardless of position. He feels that. Now, he was just at Oregon last weekend, said Oregon has moved out in front. The visits have been real impactful for Joey O'Brien because he said the same after his latest return to Notre Dame. Penn State, Notre Dame, Oregon. Those are the three I'm looking at the most. You also have Clemson and Tennessee and others involved. But Penn State, Notre Dame, and Oregon are the front runners for Joey O'Brien. It's Penn State served this weekend. They're all in, so it'll be interesting to see where they stand coming out of it. Kerry Adams, one of the top 5 corners in the country, one of the top players on Penn State's board. He's been there numerous times, including this spring, seen Penn State in a lot of different lights. Now he's taking his official visit. Some of the same contenders, right? Notre Dame and Oregon for Kerry Adams. LSU had him on a good visit this spring. He's made the rounds. But no question, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Oregon are very much in that recruitment. And what Penn State's done historically in the secondary, very exciting to him. They're going to try and make a move for on 300 linebacker Sincere Johnson. Ohio State is the on 3 RPM pick for the number 1 ranked recruit out of the state of Ohio, but Dan Connor, linebacker U, everything Penn State stands for at that position excites him. He's excited to get on this official visit. We'll see if they can move up from the 3 spot, in my opinion. I don't know if Messiah Hampton's going to make it to campus or not. Receiver from New York, number 1 player out of the Garden State. Oregon is trending on the on 3 RPM. Miami's getting a visit at the end of the month. Syracuse is in there. He's always had Penn State as one of his favorites. We'll see if he makes it to campus. 3 more 4-star DBs visiting this weekend. Dorian Barney, A&M, Michigan, Colorado in there for him. Jordan Deck, and Dorian Barney were both at Colorado this past weekend. Jordan Dex at Penn State this weekend. And then Cameron Hamil is a 4-star from Arizona coming out. Then Brian Williams is a receiver from your state, Josh, from the Sunshine State, who's kind of blown up since this spring, and Penn State's going to get him on campus this weekend for an official visit. Nittany Lions in good shape for a top 10 class, but they got to have Joey O'Brien. They got to have Kerry Adams to get there. So huge weekend for them to continue to impress those guys. And that will do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. What a week for the On3 Recruits channel. Jackson Cantwell's commitment. Jonas Walton to Notre Dame, the Irish add to their number 4 ranked class with one of the top running backs in the land. Please hit like and subscribe so you're up to date on the biggest commitments, the biggest news in college football. And we will be back on Sunday for the Inside Scoop Josh Newberg Show. The Wiltfong Whiparound on Monday will return. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend.